Hey guys, welcome back. Today is Unit 3, Day 3, where we're talking about angle, angle, side, and angle, side, angle congruence theorems. Our objective is I will be able to apply the AAS and ASA congruence theorems to prove that triangles are congruent. When we talk about congruent triangles, there are a number of theorems that we can use to prove that they are congruent. Today, we're going to learn two of these. When you know that triangles are congruent, they have the following properties. All your corresponding angles are congruent and all of your corresponding sides are congruent. Now, when we look at this image here, we're able to tell that angle A and angle D are corresponding angles because they both appear first in this written congruence statement. You can then tell that angle B and E are corresponding because they come second in our congruence statement. And we know that angle C and angle F are corresponding because they come third. Additionally, we understand that side BC is congruent to EF. We know that AB is congruent to DE and that AC is congruent to DF. All right, so we know these are similar triangles, therefore all of these things are true. Now our first congruence theorem is our angle, angle, side congruence theorem. This theorem states that triangles are congruent if you have two pairs of corresponding angles and a pair of opposite sides that are equal in both triangles. So what that looks like here is, again, angle A and F are corresponding. So here's angle A, here's angle F. B and D are corresponding, and then C and E are corresponding. You can also tell here that we have an angle, and a side, right? So here are our three statements, and because we have an angle, and a side that are congruent, similarly here, an angle, and a side, we know that these two triangles are congruent because of our angle, angle, side theorem. Now the second theorem that we're going to be talking about today is your angle, side, angle theorem. That states triangles are congruent if two pairs of corresponding angles and the pair of included sides are both equal in triangles. So again, we're given that triangle ABC and XYZ are they congruent? So we have A and X, which are corresponding angles. So here's A and X, angle B and angle Y, and then angle C here and angle Z. Now we're able to tell that this is an angle, that's a side, and this is an angle. And this side is the included side. That means it's included in between our two angles, A and B. Same thing over here. This is our included side. So we know that these are congruent triangles using our angle, side, angle theorem because angle A and X are congruent. Segment AB is congruent to segment XY, and angle B is congruent to angle Y. So here's our first teacher example. The diagram below shows angle AED and BEC. In the diagram, segment AE is congruent to segment BE, and angle D is congruent to segment angle C. Which postulate can be used to prove these two triangles congruent? The first thing that we have to do is label all of our given information. So here, I'm going to start by doing A and B are corresponding angles. E, here, those are my corresponding angles. And then C and D are my corresponding angles. Just from that first statement, we don't know that all of these angles are congruent yet. But we do know those are our corresponding angles based on the order of our letters. Now second, we're we're given the information that AE and BE are congruent. So I can draw those tick marks that tell me, yes, those two segments are congruent. Third, I know that angle D and angle C are also congruent, so I can draw those arcs. Once I have that information, I need to think about the picture. Are there information from the picture that I can infer because that is a proper inference to make? And there is actually one other piece of information here that's really important, which is angle E. I have vertical angles right here, and I know that vertical angles are congruent. That means I have this angle, and this side. And my side is opposite an angle. So I can prove that these triangles are congruent based on the angle side theorem. Take a bit of time to try your student example number 1 on your own. Now here's teacher example number 2. In the following diagram, a triangle XYZ and LMN, angle Z and angle N are congruent, and segment ZY and segment NM are also congruent. Which additional piece of information is needed to prove that the triangles are congruent? So again, I'm going to start by highlighting our corresponding angles. So here we have X and L, M and Y, and N and Z. Those are my corresponding angles. I also know that angle Z and angle N are congruent, and ZY is congruent to NM. So I was able to label all of my given information. In this particular picture, there are not additional information that can be inferred from the picture. Now what's tricky is this looks like an equilateral triangle. But we don't know that. There's no actual information here that we can use to say that these are two equilateral triangles. So just let's be careful when we're doing this, that we're making our assumptions and our inferences based on the information given and not just based on what it looks like to us. Now let's go through our different answer choices here. And I'm going to do our different answer choices in blue. If I look at X, Y is congruent to LM. And what I can do is label, this is an angle, this is a side, and this is a side. What we can recognize is AAS and ASA. Both of them require at least 2 angles. And this one gives us angle side side. ASS is not a congruence theorem. All right, so we know right away that's not going to be one of our theorems. So we have to try a different one. Let's go to angle Y and angle L. Angle Y and angle L. Those are not corresponding angles, all right? And since they're not corresponding angles, we can't use that information to prove congruence. What about angle Z and M? So here and M. Again, they're not corresponding angles. We cannot use those angles to prove congruence. So we know it can't be that one. So let's try the very last one. Angle Y and angle M. Yep, those are corresponding angles. If we know that they're congruent, then we have an angle, a side, and an angle. Therefore, if we're given this information that Y and M are congruent, then using ASA theorem, we can prove that these two triangles are indeed congruent. Take a little bit of time to try student example number 2. And then make sure in the summary that you're writing 3 to 5 sentences, that you're including the objective in your summary, and that you're using the relevant academic vocabulary. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys next time.